People often say nothing ever happens in a quiet little town. But on that day in Hillsborough, the town learned how fast peace can shatter. Police attack blind girl and her service dog. The truth shocked the whole town. No one expected it. No one was prepared. It unfolded so suddenly, almost like a bad dream. One moment, the streets were calm. The next, panic swallowed everything. A single afternoon, ordinary, warm, and gentle, turned into something no one in Hillsborough would ever forget. It began at the corner of Maple Avenue and 3rd Street. The traffic light had just turned green. Mothers pushed strollers across the sidewalks. Children laughed in the nearby park. The sound of a ball bouncing mixed with the distant hum of cicadas. Wind chimes jingled lazily from the bakery on the corner, dancing with the summer breeze. Everything felt safe, familiar, normal. And then sirens, loud, sharp, unrelenting. They didn't creep in. They stormed in, wailing from the distance at first, then closer, until they seemed to tear through the air itself. 2 police cruisers came charging out of nowhere, speeding into the intersection. Tires screamed as rubber burned against the pavement. Horns blared. Doors swung open with violent slams. Officers spilled out, their shouts colliding into one another until their words became noise. Commands shouted so fast, no one could even make sense of them. In the middle of that chaos, framed by flashing lights and screeching sirens, stood a small girl, a fragile figure in the crosswalk. In her right hand, she held a white cane. In her left, she clutched the harness of a German shepherd, Max. The dog sensed it before anyone else. He stepped in front of her without hesitation, his strong body tense, ears high, chest rigid. He wasn't growling. He wasn't attacking. He was simply shielding the girl, his partner, his person, doing exactly what he had been trained to do: protect. But in that heated instant, someone misunderstood. Someone didn't see a trained service dog. They saw only a large animal standing its ground. A gun cleared its holster. The warning never came. The sound cracked the air. A single shot. The world seemed to stop in that split second. No one knew the truth yet. Not the officers, not the stunned bystanders, not even Emily herself. And yet the choice made in that one moment would ripple through the entire town, breaking hearts and igniting outrage. Because sometimes heroes don't wear uniforms. Sometimes they walk quietly on 4 legs. But before the gunshot, before the blood, before the screams that shattered the stillness, there was only a girl and her dog. Emily Carter, blind since the day she was born. She had never once seen her mother's smile, never glimpsed the blue sky, never traced the letters of her favorite books with her eyes. Instead, she had learned to navigate the world through sound, through touch, through trust. And that trust had a name: Max. He came into Emily's life when she was 6 years old, a fully trained German Shepherd service dog. Loyal, patient, intelligent. He was not just her eyes, he was her anchor, her guardian, her family. Every morning, their routine was the same. They would set out together, Emily gripping his harness as he guided her step by step. Down Willow Street, past the bakery with the jingling chimes, across, the library where Emily loved to sit even if she couldn't read the books, and toward her school's special education program. Max always knew when to stop at a curb, when to wait, when to gently pull her forward, or when to block her path to keep her safe. Soon, the people of Hillsborough began to recognize them. The quiet girl with the long brown hair and the proud German shepherd wearing the harness stamped clearly with the words, "Do not pet, service dog." Most gave them space, some offered smiles, and a few whispered soft encouragements as they passed. But those who paid attention saw something deeper, a bond that spoke without words, a conversation carried in movements, in trust, in silent promises. Emily had no brothers or sisters. Her father wasn't in her life. Her mother worked long, tiring hours just to make ends meet. And so in the empty spaces between home and school, in the silence that often surrounded her, Max filled every gap. He was her courage when crowds pressed too close, her calm when her heart raced, her warmth on cold nights when the loneliness felt heavier than the darkness she had always known. Once, when her teacher asked how she felt about being blind, Emily only smiled and said softly, "I don't feel blind when Max is with me. I feel normal." And Max, faithful as always, never let her feel otherwise. That's why when the sirens came, when the air shifted and danger rushed toward them, Max reacted instantly. Emily and Max had just stepped off the curb, crossing Maple Avenue as they had hundreds of times before. Emily felt the smooth cane folded in her left hand, the steady harness under her right palm. The sidewalk was familiar beneath her shoes. The rhythm of the crosswalk signal still echoed in her mind. But then the world changed. The sirens grew louder, closer, sharper. The air filled with the smell of burning rubber as cars skidded. Emily felt Max's body tense under her touch. His. Breathing grew shallow, his muscles locked. She knew at once something was terribly wrong. Two police cruisers stormed into the intersection, brakes shrieking, stopping just feet away from them. Doors burst open. Men jumped out, weapons drawn. "Get down!" one voice thundered. Emily froze. The words came like strikes of lightning, sharp but confusing. Were they talking to her? To someone else? She couldn't tell. Her chest pounded. Her ears rang. Max moved first. His body pressed in front of hers, forming a barrier, unshaken and alert. He didn't bark. He didn't lunge. He simply stood strong, his focus locked on the men with guns. But to eyes that didn't understand, to hands already gripping weapons, Max looked like a threat. "Gun!" another voice shouted, and then the world split open. The shot was deafening. Emily flinched as Max yelped, a sharp, gut-wrenching sound that pierced her soul. His body collapsed at her feet. Warm blood splashed across her shoes. "No! No!" she screamed, falling to her knees, her trembling hands frantically searching for him in the chaos. Her fingers finally found his fur, warm, wet, shaking. People gasped from the sidewalks. Phones came up. A voice shouted desperately, "She's blind! That's her service dog!" But it was too late. Emily clung to Max, sobbing, rocking back and forth, whispering his name over and over. He tried to lift his head but couldn't. And in that silent, devastating moment, Hillsborough froze. The town had changed forever. For a mistake that could never be undone. The crowd hushed, the air heavy with shock. Emily still knelt in the middle of the crosswalk, her small arms wrapped around Max's bleeding body, her face buried in his fur. Around her, anger boiled. Voices rose. Demands, questions, shouts of blame aimed at the officers, who now looked pale, rattled, unsure of themselves. Then, cutting through the chaos, a calm and steady voice rose above the noise. "Step back. Let me through." Heads turned. From the edge of the crowd, an older man stepped forward. His movements were deliberate, measured, each footfall grounding the chaos around him. His back was straight, despite the years etched into his frame. His jacket bore the faded insignia of a military uniform, patches that told stories of battles fought, of discipline earned the hard way. Beside him walked a second German shepherd, massive, muscular, eyes sharp, coat dark as midnight. Calm, poised and exuding quiet authority. James Holloway didn't hesitate. He didn't ask questions. He didn't shout commands. He saw Emily. He saw Max. He saw the fear, the desperation, the fragile thread between life and loss. And he knew exactly what to do. The officers instinctively stepped aside, drawn back by the presence of someone who radiated command without a single raised hand. The crowd held its breath. The air itself seemed to thin, waiting for what would happened next. Duke, the veteran's dog, moved with precision. He sniffed the air, eyes locking on Max, then lowered his massive head, letting out a low, resonant growl. Not threatening, not hostile, but full of recognition. Max stirred faintly, lifting a trembling paw. The connection was immediate. These dogs, silent heroes in their own right, understood one another. James knelt beside Max, his hands steady and gentle, his voice quiet but firm. "I know this dog," he said softly. "His name is Max. He served with us." A ripple ran through the crowd. Whispers of shock, awe, and disbelief spread like wildfire. A war dog, a hero, a protector, not just a companion, but a creature who had faced danger and lived to carry its lessons. Emily's tear-streaked face looked up, wide-eyed, fear and confusion battling for dominance. James met her gaze. "We're going to save him," he promised. "I swear." The sirens returned, but this time they didn't bring panic. They brought hope. An ambulance pulled up swiftly, lights flashing, tires crunching against the gravel. Paramedics burst out with a stretcher, ready for the worst. The officers, pale and guilt-stricken, stepped aside silently, unsure how to act, how to repair what had just happened. "He's still breathing," James called out firmly, his tone brooking no argument. "Move fast, every second counts." Emily refused to let go. Her tiny hands clung desperately to Max's paw. "I'm coming with him," she whispered, voice barely audible over the hum of engines. "She's just a kid," a paramedic protested, hand raised, unsure. James interrupted, sharply, leaving no room for debate. "She's going, and so am I." Carefully, they lifted Max onto the stretcher. Every movement was deliberate, each step measured to avoid jarring the wound. The towel beneath him was soaked with blood, but the dog's breathing, though shallow, remained steady. Emily climbed into the ambulance, keeping her grasp on his paw, as if by holding him, she could anchor him to life itself. James followed, taking a seat opposite her. Duke leapt in last, settling silently at Max's feet. Inside the ambulance, the world outside faded. The wail of sirens became background noise, the shouting of the crowd a distant echo. Only the soft hum of the engine, the rhythmic beeping of monitors, and Emily's quiet, desperate voice remained. "Stay with me, Max," she murmured, her forehead resting gently against his side. "Please don't leave me. You're all I have." Duke rested his head lightly on Max's back, lending the dog silent strength. James placed a firm hand on Emily's shoulder. "He's a fighter," he said softly. "He's faced worse. He's not giving up now." Emily didn't answer. She squeezed Max's paw, desperate, quiet, full of hope that this bond, this lifeline, could pull them through. The ambulance raced toward the Hillsborough Veterinary Trauma Center. Every second mattered. The doors flew open under the bright hospital lights. Staff sprang into action, rolling Max inside without a pause. Emily tried to follow, clutching his paw still, but a nurse gently stopped her. "Sweetheart, we need to take him in now. We promise. We'll do everything we can." Emily shook her head, her grip unyielding. "He needs to know I'm here," she whispered. James stepped closer, voice calm but firm. "Let them work. We'll stay right here." The doors closed behind Max, and the hallway seemed unbearably quiet. Too still, too empty. James sat beside Emily, his military jacket draped over her shoulders, shielding her from the chill, a symbol of protection and calm. Duke remained at her feet, loyal, unwavering, his head resting gently on her legs. Minutes stretched into hours. Emily said little, holding the harness in her lap like it still connected them, tracing the stitching with trembling fingers as if it might vanish if she looked away. Sometimes she whispered stories to Duke, her voice barely a whisper. Other times she stared at the floor, lost in thought. James made calls, covered hospital fees without a word, and then returned to sit quietly, scanning the door of the operating room Then back to Emily. She's stronger than she looks, he murmured once to a nurse. But no child should ever have to be this strong. Finally, a doctor emerged, removing her gloves with tired hands. He made it through surgery, she said. He lost a lot of blood, but we stabilized him. He's not out of the woods yet, but he's alive. Emily's eyes welled with tears. Not from fear this time, but relief. For the first time since the shooting, she exhaled. The doctor led them into a small recovery room. Max lay on a padded mat hooked up to IVs, his body wrapped in fresh bandages. Machines beeped softly beside him, each sound like a small victory. "He can hear you," the doctor said gently, "but he needs rest." Emily approached slowly, kneeling beside him. Max's eyes fluttered open for a moment, just enough to see her. Just enough. To wag his tail once, weak but clear, she smiled through tears. "You came back to me." James stood silently at the door, his arms folded, face unreadable, but his eyes glassed over, memories flickering behind them. He had seen soldiers cling to life like this. He had seen dogs like Max Refusato die because someone still needed them. Duke padded to Max's side and lay down, placing his head carefully across Max's paws as if taking the first shift in a long night of watch. The nurse brought in a warm blanket and a cup of soup for Emily. She barely touched it. She didn't leave Max's side. Not that night, not the next. Each morning, she arrived before the sun rose. She read Tohim from her favorite books, sang softly, when he whimpered in sleep, and fed him warm broth from a spoon when he refused to eat on his own. The quiet room became their world, and with every passing day, Max's breathing grew stronger, his eyes clear, his tail wagging just a little more. James checked in often, sitting beside Emily, sometimes in silence, sometimes sharing stories from the past, of dogs who had saved lives, of battles won and lost, of loyalty that never wavered. In those quiet hours, something unspoken began to form between them. Not just a bond, but a purpose. Because Max had survived, and now they had something to fight for. James Holloway had seen many things in his life. War zones, chaos, loss, but nothing had shaken him quite like the sound of a little girl, whispering her dog's name through tears night after night. He knew this couldn't end at the hospital. It wasn't enough that Max had survived. Someone had to be held accountable. So he made a call. The man who answered was an old friend, Alex Reynolds, a former military attorney now working in civil rights, law. They had served together overseas. James didn't even need to explain much. "I saw the video," Alex said. "I'll be there in 2 days." The video recorded by a bystander had already started to circulate online. It showed everything. Max calmly stepping in front of Emily. No barking, no aggression. The officer didn't give a command. He just raised his weapon and fired. When Alex arrived, he sat down with Emily and listened closely as Cher counted the moment, her small voice trembling, but firm. "I didn't know what was happening," she said, "but Max did. He protected me. He always does." Alex nodded. "That's more than enough." Over the next few days, James and Alex worked together, gathering medical records, witness statements, and securing sworn affidavit from the veterinary staff. They compiled everything. And through it all, Emily listened quietly, carefully, taking in every word, every pause. The way people shifted when they spoke about Max, and the weight in James's voice when he talked about justice. Then, one morning, she stood up beside Max's recovery bed and said, "I want to tell them what happened myself." James looked at her at the strength in her voice. "Then we'll make sure they hear you," he said. The courthouse was quiet that morning. Inside the small courtroom, every seat was filled. Neighbors, reporters, school teachers, even the veterinarian who had operated on Max all sat shoulder-to shoulder. No one came for spectacle. They came because what happened mattered. At the front, two police officers sat behind their attorneys, their faces drawn and unreadable. On the other side sat Emily Carter, with Max lying on a padded mat beside her, his bandages still visible beneath his vest. James Holloway stood behind her, one hand resting gently on her shoulder, and Duke lay at his feet, ever faithful. Max's presence in that room was enough to silence even the loudest critic. He didn't bark, he didn't growl, he simply lay there, breathing softly, as if he knew this was the moment everything had been leading to. The judge called the room to order. James was the first to testify. His voice was firm but steady as he spoke of Max's background, how he had served in Afghanistan, how he had detected explosives, and how he had saved lives without hesitation. This dog didn't just protect soldiers, James said, he protected a child. And he paid for it. Then it was Emily's turn. She stood slowly, her small hands brushing the top of Max's head. She faced the judge. Her voice wavered at first, but then grew steady, as if Max's presence gave her strength from beneath her hand. "He's my yes," she said. "He's my best friend. He helps me walk, cross the street, find my classroom. He never hurt anyone. He saved me." The courtroom fell completely still. When their attorney played the video, the truth was undeniable. The footage showed Max calmly standing guard in front of Emily, and then the shot. There was no aggression, no warning, just a mistake. But this time, the mistake would not be ignored. The verdict came quietly, but its weight was undeniable. The judge's voice echoed through the courtroom. "The officers are found guilty of excessive force and are hereby ordered to pay full compensation to Emily Carter. A formal public apology shall be issued, and mandatory training in disability protocol will be required for all officers involved." There were no cheers, no shouts, just silence. And then slowly the sound of applause, respectful, steady, and filled with something deeper than celebration. Justice. Emily didn't smile right away. She simply reached down and placed her hand on Max's head, as if to say, "We did it." 1 month later, the streets of Hillsborough looked different. The tree shad begun to change, their leaves golden and crisp underfoot. The sun hung low in the sky, soft and warm, and down Maple Avenue, a familiar sight returned. A little girl in a blue coat holding the harness of a proud German shepherd by her side. Max walked carefully, still recovering, but strong. His gait was steady now, his eyes alert. The scar on his side was a quiet reminder of everything he'd been through and everything he had survived. Emily smiled as they passed the bakery. Someone waved. Another handed her a bag of treats for Max. A few children asked if they could pet Duke, who walked proudly beside James just a few steps behind. The town had changed too. People now understood the vest Max wore. They knew not to reach without asking. They looked at Emily differently, not with pity, but with respect. Then came a special day. A ceremony was held in the town park. A small wooden stage, a handful of folding chairs, and a crowd gathered, not out of curiosity, but gratitude. James spoke briefly, then called Emily and Max to the front. "This dog saved lives on the battlefield," he said, placing a medal on Max's collar. "And has saved one here at home." The crowd applauded. Emily bent down, wrapped her arms around Max's neck, and whispered, "I'm so proud of you." As the sun dipped behind the trees, they sat on a bench near the lake. Duke chased leaves. James told quiet stories of service and sacrifice. And Emily, for the first time in weeks, laughed. She leaned close to Max's ear and whispered, "No one's ever going to hurt us again." And Max, true to his wordless promise, stayed right by her side, always.